Welcome back, friends. You're just in time for the Johnny Brew Show.
What's going on, everybody? My name is John Brookhagen, host of the Johnny Brew Show, and welcome to another jam-packed, exciting episode of the Johnny Brew Show. You know we like to have a close look, especially on education and politics, and we've been reaching out to anyone and everyone running for office as a conservative here in Nevada. And you could see some of our great interviews, whether you're talking about Tony Lane running in CD4, or you're talking about party politics and Jesse Law, who is just coming back from Winnemucca last week. So we have somebody else running in CD4, and they have what I really liked, promotional video. So here is the campaign video for Carolina Serrano. Play tape.
Construir el muro fronterizo, defender nuestras comunidades de los radicales que quieren acabar con la policía, proteger nuestros valores, pro vida y el derecho a nacer, proteger nuestro derecho a portar armas, luchar contra el socialismo. Estados Unidos, primero. These are my values. I'm Carolina Serrano, I'm a conservative Republican, and I'm running for Congress. I wanted you to hear directly from me in Spanish why I'm running. Because Democrats want you to believe that someone that looks and sounds like me can't believe those things. Well, I'm here to tell you that I do, and I'm not the only one. I was proud to spearhead the Latinos for Trump effort in Nevada, and I saw firsthand how many people want to join our cause. Democrats want you to believe that building the wall and protecting our communities is somehow racist. Well, it's not. Y que se atrevan a decirme que soy racista. I firmly believe we need to build the wall and end illegal immigration. We must fight back against defunding the police. The riots, looting, and crime we see when our police have less funding takes place in minority communities, not in Nancy Pelosi's neighborhood. And we must do all we can to expose the socialist agenda that many are pushing. I've seen the horrors of this ideology in Latin America, and it will rot us to the core if we let it take hold here. I know that you believe these same things, and I hope you'll join our team. I need your help to ensure my voice doesn't get drowned out by the liberal attack dogs that won't like someone like me speaking out. I can't just sit idly by and allow Democrats to destroy our families, our communities, or attack us for what we believe anymore. I'm Carolina Serrano, and I approve this message because los demócratas hoy no me conocen, pero soy su peor pesadilla.
All right, so here on the Johnny Brew Show, we are more than happy to be able to introduce Miss Carolina Serrano. How are you, Carolina?
Doing well,
Carolina.
thank you. Carolina.
Perdón.
It's okay. It happens all the time.
I'm sure it does. So I really like how in your campaign ad, anything that Democrats can deem as possibly racist, you say in Spanish. I think that's a wonderful strategy. So tell me, what went behind? I love the video. I know you have a really small production team. I know you're still working full time. We're going to get into all that. But tell me about making the video and the message that you tried to impart.
So when I started everything, I was very set from the get-go that it was going to be just me in the message. I think that maybe comes from also doing journalism. You know, you don't want the message to get lost. So I wanted it as clear and concise as possible. And then, you know, my team is really great. And Jeremy, he actually had the idea of, hey, he had the same idea. He was thinking the same thing, no gimmicks. And then he said, why don't we do some in Spanish? You know, because let's hook, you know, with something different. And I was like, yeah, let's do it.
And, you know, first of all, you talk about these great American values. I mean, whether you're talking about the Second Amendment, or you're talking about having a sovereign country, or you're talking about election integrity, and these are, you know, things that resonate with the Hispanic and Latino community, wouldn't you say?
I mean, it resonates with everybody. It doesn't matter. I mean, if you know, no matter what country you're from, if you love your country, if you have a sense of patriotism and a sense for wanting your community to do well, those things resonate with you.
100%.
Yeah.
And you talk about, regardless of what country you come from, I mean, countries are supposed to be proud of themselves. Every country has got a dark past. Every country should be proud of themselves, proud of each other, and trying to make the country better. I mean, that's just, it sounds like I'm saying something controversial right now. When
It's not at all.
Oh my gosh. So let's start from the beginning. You were born here in America, and I'm guessing both of your parents were born in Colombia?
Yes.
And then I understand that you grew up between Colombia and America. Where in America did you grow up? And tell me about, being a young girl, going back and forth, and what that experience was like.
Yeah. So I was born in Orange County, California. My first language was Spanish because, my parents spoke Spanish at home. And then once you get into the school system, then I always understood Spanish, but I kind of didn't speak it that great.
Did your parents speak any English?
Yeah, they do.
But did they when you were a child?
I mean...
Or were you totally surrounded by
It was Spanish at home.
Right.
Yeah, it was Spanish at home, but we would speak back in English, right? So from when I can remember, they'd speak Spanish. Obviously, Mom can speak English, getting around and doing stuff. But yeah, so I always understood it, but I kind of lost the ability to speak it very well, like great.
Right.
And then when I was in third grade, we moved to Colombia for a year. All of our vacations were in Colombia. And then...
and you moved to Colombia, went to school in Colombia?
Went to school in
When
Colombia.
you were 8, you said?
I don't know exactly.
But elementary school?
But it was elementary. So I was third grade. I did in Colombia for a year. Then we came back. And I remember being in Colombia, and they gave me a test. Obviously, it's in Spanish.
Right,
and I remember I wrote in the corner, like, I don't understand anything, to the teacher. And kids were really nice. They helped me out with...
Oh, so you couldn't speak English, but you couldn't read Spanish?
No, I spoke
had trouble.
I spoke English because remember at this point
third grade.
Once I hit the school system, I spoke English, understood Spanish, but didn't speak Spanish great.
Or read or write it.
And so then when I went to Colombia, there was a bit of a challenge, but within that year,
by the end of the year, you were doing much better.
You absorb it really fast. And then we came back. I did 4th and 5th grade, and then we moved for good after I finished 5th grade. So I was 9 years old at that point.
Can you tell me more about the difference between 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade? I mean, because I'm a teacher, and we love covering education. And I mean, for example, where was Valeria from? She wasn't from Colombia, was she? Chile. She was from Chile. Right. And, so we talked a lot about, the differences in education and, how much politics is in education, in different countries as far as promoting socialism or capitalism. But I'm sure in 4th grade they're not giving you the tenets of capitalism versus socialism. But what were the starkest differences from, going from one class to another? Was one more advanced than another?
I would say... So I can't really compare 3rd, 4th, 5th, but definitely after, when I look at the education that's going on right now, obviously I'm not in classrooms anymore, but during my 4th and 5th grade years here, there was never anything political. I don't remember any of that stuff. And I feel like, I don't know if I left before that stuff starts really filtering in, but once I was in school in Colombia, they're definitely it's stricter. It's a private school, and my classrooms are much smaller.
Was it a Catholic school?
We had we had a church. I remember there's like a chapel on campus, but we never did.
Gotcha.
They just had the chapel, but we never really had any mass or anything. But yeah, I feel like it's definitely not a stricter educate, like a little
rigid?
a little bit higher,
more challenging,
a little bit more challenging. I was seeing biology, chemistry, everything really early on.
Right.
Yeah.
Because in America, 100 years ago, kids were learning calculus in 11th grade as part of the regular curriculum.
Oh, see?
And over the past 100 years, we continue to dumb it down. And, I'm sure, like you said, we were probably teaching chemistry and biology, introducing it in elementary school, which we've stopped doing now, but you're saying...
It's crazy.
It is crazy. It's unbelievable how we can continue to water down our education system and think that we're going to continue to be the best in the world. Mm-hmm. And, and it's been happening for 100 years now. And all of a sudden, these past 3 years, we were already off a cliff. Yeah. So now we're literally like, this could be rock bottom for our education system. And
scary.
Yeah,
It's really
it is.
scary.
It is.
Yeah.
And that's why I love to know more about the differences.
Yeah.
What else was different, from a child's eyes? Where did you like it better? Do you like California better or Colombia better as a innocent little kid?
I always say I'm really happy that I went to school in Colombia. It's the upbringing is different. Your school experience is different from what I hear here. I remember I still kept in touch with my friends from once they moved into 6th grade, and I wanted them to come visit, but their parents were like, no, Colombia in the 90s, no way.
Right.
But, the stories that she was talking about, I remember this, stuff that she was telling me about, I didn't even know what she was talking about, like kids were doing.
Right.
So I feel like it was a lot more innocent in Colombia.
Right.
In that sense.
Right, because you're not so exposed.
Yeah, you're not so exposed. Obviously, it's before
Parents
social
have
media.
a lot more control over what
Yeah.
their children see.
Yeah, I mean, classrooms are smaller. Teachers are really involved.
And are respected.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was Colombia's a fun experience because you have a lot of fun down there, but it's like an innocent fun.
Right.
It's like pulling jokes and
Right.
stuff
Kick
like
the
that.
can.
Yeah. Yeah. Get a little rowdy, but
Right.
I think that
I grew up in New York. I mean, we made fun of each other.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
Playfully bullied each other.
Right.
I mean, it made us who we were. I mean,
Yeah. But I do think that I'm super grateful that my experience in high school was there and not here. For sure.
Really?
Yeah.
And then from that perspective of Colombia in the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
tell us about Pablo Escobar and how he was viewed by a teenage girl, that's just living in Colombia. Is he a cult hero? Is he a criminal? How did you guys...
So Pablo's relationship with Medellin specifically, which is the city that he was in, is, I don't know how it is now, but at the time I think it was favored by some. I mean, I really can't speak to it too much because even when I was growing up, he had already died. And the hottest years were kind of waning. Yeah, they were kind of waning out. But
kind of like me, I had the mob in New York City. And
Yeah.
as I was older, they were all getting arrested and stuff like that. So I'm guessing it's relative.
But I do see a difference I think that there's a lot more street smarts that I've gained from being there. You're very familiar with cartel stuff from being down there. I mean, I remember a nice country club in the 90s when I was living there was bombed. I'm used to, having the bomb sniffing dogs at the entrances of the mall. They still have them to this day.
Right.
So, I mean, it's definitely...
And that was from the cartel wars.
Yeah, and
originated with that.
And it still goes on today. And that's what I try to tell people. It's like, you don't get what you're inviting in when you kind of leave these power vacuums open because
right.
It's ruthless.
Whether you're talking about Afghanistan or you're talking about the Chaz zone in Seattle.
Yeah, it's ruthless and it's a whole different kind of lifestyle. And so, from when I was little, I'm used to seeing that stuff,
It's
and hearing about it. Yeah.
And then, so you were in Colombia for middle school and high school. Mm-hmm. And then what happened?
So I graduated high school, and I remember at that point I already wanted to stay because
in Colombia.
Yeah, I was happy in Colombia, but my parents were like, "No, you need to go back to the U.S. There's just a lot more opportunity out there."
And so you're with your parents. So you and your parents
and my sister.
You were born in California. Mm-hmm. Younger sister?
Older sister. So I'm the youngest of 4. My 2 brothers did not move down to Colombia because when we moved down, they were already finishing high school, going into college.
Gotcha.
So my
and
parents,
they were in California.
So they were kind of already getting,
gotcha.
settled
so
into.
Your older brothers stayed. You guys went to Colombia for a year. Went back to California. Went back to Colombia for good.
For about 8 years.
With your 2 brothers staying in the States.
Yeah.
So then your parents are trying to shuffle you off without them to the United States.
Yeah, I mean they were gonna come eventually, but. Yeah, it was no. You can't stay down here. You got to go back up. It's
why?
Better.
Why are they so insistent?
More opportunities, and they're right.
Right, but I mean, what are they selling to a 17-year-old girl who wants to stay with her friends and stay in Colombia? They're just saying opportunity isn't going to get you on the plane.
Oh no! See, here's the difference between parenting nowadays. It's what they said goes. You know what I mean? They are the authority, and we had no way to push back on it. But I mean. My parents were right in the sense that there's more opportunity here in the U.S., and they understood that. That's one of the reasons why they left their family and came to the U.S. in the 70s.
Right.
And,
what did your parents do?
So my mom was a housewife, and my dad was an accountant.
All right.
Yeah.
And he was he working internationally, or was he working from home, say? Or like,
no,
how was he able to go back and forth between Colombia and America? I mean, that costs money.
Yeah.
to go back and forth to have a house in California, you know, so.
So he worked at Xerox while he was here in the U.S., but then he did accounting in Colombia. And then it was, I think, part of the reason was they wanted to be close to my mom's family. My mom's, all her family's down there. And then they wanted us to experience.
Right, and we know how Colombians are with family and babies.
It's huge.
And,
yeah. And they wanted us to experience, you know, being down there, the education down there. So, and I'm really grateful that they did it that way.
Good.
Yeah.
So they shuffled you off.
So they said, no, you're going back. And because, you know, if you've ever been to, you know, Latin America, in Colombia, there's really no middle class per se. It's either you do well or you don't. And one of the challenges down there that you see a lot is, you know, if you're not born into a family that has money, then
it's almost like
it's a struggle.
System.
It's a struggle.
Right.
Yeah, it's tough to break out of it. And so they understood, you know, we had more opportunity in the U.S. even though we didn't have a lot of money.
Right.
They had enough to.
There's no ceiling. Mm-hmm. Whereas you guys, I mean, it sounds like you had as good a life as you could have in Colombia without being part of that elite class.
Yeah.
And so they were able to take that little bit of opportunity to force you to find greener pastures. So where did you move to California?
I moved back to California initially for about maybe a year and a half.
Late 90s?
Yeah, so I started working at this point now. No, I graduated high school 2001.
Okay.
Came back in 2002 and started working. I started working at Nordstrom.
Grumman.
Yeah.
Nice. Were you building airplanes?
No, Nordstrom.
Oh, Nordstrom. No. I'm thinking Northrop Grumman. You're thinking
Could
Nordstrom.
You imagine? I was 16 years old, working in the shoe department.
No wonder you're a Republican. I was thinking you work for Northrop Grumman.
So I started working at 16, and then I've kind of just always been working.
At 16? You had already graduated high school?
Yeah.
In Colombia?
Yeah. So
at 15 or 16?
Yeah, so I skipped half of 10th grade, not because I'm super smart, but
you know. And I've been watching your interviews. You are super smart, so don't be too humble. But continue.
I gamed the system a little bit because in Colombia there's 2 school years, so you can either start. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, so there's one school year that starts. Gosh, I forgot now. February through.
Right, they have a winter break, like we have a summer break because they're on the southern hemisphere.
Yeah, but you can. So different schools have different calendars. Some follow like the North American one, and then some are.
So using that, you gain the system.
Yeah, so some are from February to December, and the other one is September to June. So I got out of a school that was September to June, and then I said, I just want to go into
right. Let's just do
10th
this.
grade. Let's just do it. I can take a break, and then you take an exam. I passed the exam to qualify for 10th grade. So then I went into half of 10th grade.
Things haven't changed a bit, huh? I see you driving up here, and you're doing this event and that event. That's Carolina Serrano,
that's
right?
Me. Yeah.
All right. So then, 2003, you enrolled at UNLV?
No, so I was working at Nordstrom, living in California. Again, mom and dad didn't have, a college fund to send me to college, so I was working.
Right.
And then initially I was going to go to Saddleback College in California, and then I said, I really like Vegas because I had a brother, my second oldest brother, he moved out here, and I'd started to visit him because,
obviously he's a brother.
So close, yeah. And then I said to my sister, hey, let's go to Vegas. Let's move to Vegas. And so she's like, yeah, okay. So we packed up our cars and moved to Vegas. And then I was like, okay, well, you need a year for
sometime, right?
Yeah,
residency.
The residency. So I'm like, okay, put it off another year. And then at that point, I'm getting into my 20s. And then I'd always heard in Vegas you could make a ton of money off tips.
Right.
And so I remember I always had that in the back of my head. And then it kind of that's the way I chose to go. When I turned 21, I went into the service industry, into hospitality, and made a ton of money. And I would always say, I'm like, okay, I'll go to school. I'm going to go to school.
Right. And then you make $1,500 in tips that night. You're like, I'll go to school.
That's exactly how it is.
The next night, you make $1,700 in tips. Next, I'm going to school, I promise.
Yeah. But then I started, I think at 25 was when I was like, okay, I really need to stop, working in the hospitality industry. I need to find something, more career
oriented.
Yeah, oriented. And so I started going back to, I went to CSN first. did my associates, and then I started to take it really seriously. As the years went by, I started to take it more seriously,
Right.
and then I was like, okay, full on.
So
we're doing this.
let's talk about some of your service industry. Where did you work?
So I started off.
This is the late 2000s?
So from when I first moved to Vegas, I started off in hospitality, working front desk. Then I moved into VIP services. And then in the hotel that I was working at, the Mirage, they were opening a nightclub. And one of the guys came in and said, hey, if any of you girls are looking for a job. And I remember I was
And
like,
that's Jet, right?
Jet.
Right.
Yeah, wow. Yeah.
I used to play shows at King Inc.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Right across the
I
way.
used to be a musician. We used to,
Yeah.
10 years ago, we would look a little different, I'm guessing. Or be talking about something different.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, so I remember he came in and I said, this is the tipping job that I've been waiting for.
Yeah.
So I went and I interviewed, and the owner of the company, I remember I sat in an interview with him. To this day, he's a dear.
Really?
Yeah, I consider him like one of my mentors. Both of the owners of that company. Love them. They're supporters of mine to this day for the campaign and
Really?
everything. Yeah. So that's the one cool thing about.
I wish Jet was still there.
I know.
We drove by. I know somebody who works at the Mirage.
Yeah.
And there's no...
There's nothing there.
Yeah, well, they use it, I think. You could rent it out.
Yeah.
I think, like, for your big victory.
Yeah, we should do it there. We should go back to where it started, baby.
That's where it all started. That's great. And so did you work there for a long time?
I did, yeah. I was with them. That just, the nightlife, you start to move around different venues. It's a very small industry.
I was bartending at Rock at New York.
Yeah.
At the same time, if this was the late 2000s.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, so I got into the nightlife 2006, and then from there I was with their company for a couple of years. I helped open the bank, train the girls there. Then I moved to Win and Encore, and Win and Encore was there for 8 years.
Really, and that's Tryst
and Excess.
and Excess. That's right. That's right.
Yeah, best years. Yeah, yeah,
and a lot of
good
money.
stuff. A lot of money.
Holy cow! And I think back to those days, and I think about some of these people who are made so much money.
Mm-hmm.
If they just put half of all the tips they ever made in a bank account, right? When these girls are making $2,000 a night.
I remember when I was training for Jet, one of the girls, because we trained at Light, which was at Bellagio at the time. And I remember one of the girls, is 21, and she's maybe at this point, maybe late 20s, maybe early 30s.
Right.
And when you're 21, you look at somebody that age and you're like, oh, they're so old.
Right.
And now I look
at us.
Come on. She's young. But I remember she told me, she goes, the one thing I can say to you, save your money.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, no offense, but girls don't hold on to that 21-year-old waitress cocktailing looks and body forever,
No, and those are the things that...
And it's a modeling contract.
It's a modeling.
It's not a
It's a modeling,
contract.
it's a modeling position, and that's one of the things that I feel like we can't talk about anymore. But that I was so grateful from the guy who I'm saying, his name Andrew. So he was the one that hired me for Jet, and he said it to me he said it in that meeting when he first met me. He goes, "You have a shelf life, making money, get out, take that money and do something else with it." And he always emphasized that, because it's true.
Do you know who Vegas Dave is?
I know of him.
Yeah, and he's always, he's a bit, much for me, but at the same time, he was a fixture in the clubs, and he was always dropping, the $100,000 for a night with the big old stupid Magnum bottles, and he was always telling the girls constantly, take this money and do, you can't do this forever.
No, you can't. And
it's a great opportunity. It's like being in the NFL.
Exactly. Great comparison. It's for people who are in their 20s. You're young. You make the money. And it's a great place to be, because I can't tell you how many people I've met from that industry.
Right.
All across the board. It's given me, I think, the best social training I feel to do this now.
Right. It's such a large part of Las Vegas. And they got the culinary unions. I
was a union member.
And all of that stuff, it's got to be a large chunk of Clark County or of Nevada, and people should be able to relate to it. And we don't have, like you say a lot in the interviews I've heard you doing, regular people. And you're telling us you're a regular person.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm somebody who, I knew I had to pay my way through college. I found the way to do it. I've been independent. You know, my parents are great. Don't get me wrong. They gave all of us kids the best life. But yeah, they don't
There's only so much they could do.
There's only so much they can do. And so, yeah, I've been independent from, like I said, I started working at 16. By, 21, I'm moving out, and we're all self-sufficient. All 4 of us kids have been self-sufficient, and that's...
So then you ended up going to UNLV.
I did.
And you studied journalism and media. So
I started in journalism and media studies because this was when I was little. I thought I wanted to be, like a news anchor or entertainment reporter was the first one. And so I went to school for that. Then, like a year in, I was like, oh, I'm going to switch to hospitality. I don't know why I did that, but I did. And so I switched to hospitality. I did 3 years of hospitality. My senior year of hospitality, I was like, yeah, no, I don't know why I'm doing this. You don't need to go to school for the degree. You learn it in the business.
Right, you go to Win and get a job as a janitor, and you could become the manager of an outlet.
That's how you know hospitality. And I had already been doing that for, at that point, almost 10 years. And so
then you knew people. And
so I'm like, yeah, this isn't for me. So then I, dropped out again. And then at that point, I moved around a bit. I moved to Montana. I moved to, it was Montana.
A lot of Colombians in Montana?
No Colombians in Montana. But Montana was really cool. But I was trying to find a career without going to school. And then I kind of realized, maybe I need to just finish a degree.
Since you're so close.
Yeah, I was so close anyways. And my sister would be like, you should really go back.
That stupid piece of paper opens doors.
Yeah. I don't want to rag on the education. I feel like for me...
Go ahead.
I feel like college is not for everybody.
Right.
For me, though, I think it was good that I did it because I think I needed that bit of maybe discipline,
right.
And
I'm an academic. I'm not anti-college.
Yeah.
But I believe that people should have a plan.
Yes.
You go to college for an end goal. You want to be a pilot, you have to go to college. If you want to be the food and beverage manager at Caesars... You could go to college, or you could go get a job bar back in at Caesars, become the bartender, and then become an F&B manager. They have programs.
Yeah.
You don't have to go to UNLV for 4 or 5 years and rack up student debt. But you could become part of. They have things like the RAMP program, the Regional Assistant Manager program, or something like that. Where, like you said, there's avenues. Mm-hmm. If you want to be if you want to be rich, you could do underwater welding. You could join the military. Again, I'm an academic. I love academics, but college you need to have a purpose and end goal.
Yeah. And then then I thought, well, hey, my dream when I was little was always to be in journalism, and I'm like, let's do that again. So then I went back. I remember hearing from the advisors, hey, it only pushes you back about 6 months if you come back now. And I was like,
word up.
I'm in. Yeah. And I'm glad I did it because really that was the move that got me into politics.
Right.
So Steve Jobs has this really great saying that says, listen to your heart and intuition because it somehow already knows what you want to become. It's true. If you kind of lean into that, something told me like, hey, just go back for journalism. And I did. And it wasn't journalism that I ended up being in, but that led me to where I'm at now.
Right. And, it's weird because I keep paralleling me and you because of the nightclub experience. And then UNLV, I went back to UNLV and stuff like that. But, you talk about that Steve Jobs quote. Mm-hmm. I had always thought, I used to play poker, I used to bartend, I used to own businesses. And I always said, when I'm done, I'm going to make a couple million, and then I'm going to retire, and I'm going to become a teacher.
Yeah.
And I had that moment about 10 years ago where I said, stop saying I'm going to do all this and then become a teacher. Forget about the money. Just follow what you really want to do.
That's it.
So I went to UNLV.
Yep.
Became a teacher.
Yeah. And it probably doesn't feel like work, right?
That's the
when
point.
You enjoy it, and that's what I feel like I learned in the industry too. I put so much emphasis on money, and then I realized I'm like, it doesn't matter how much money you make. If it's not something you enjoy, you're not going to be happy.
Now, do you enjoy dressing up, loud music and lights, and smiling and having fun with people? Then do that.
Yeah.
And then the money is just bonus.
Yes.
Right? And now, I love teaching.
Yeah.
So for 13 hours, I'm working. For 13 straight hours teaching kids.
Yeah.
But you got to find a way to pace yourself. So then I'm just hanging out with kids all day.
Yeah.
Teaching them math.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And other people would never be able to do it, but I enjoy it.
Right.
So just keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, just find something that you enjoy, and then it doesn't feel like work.
So, are you going to be the next host of Extra?
No.
So what happened?
No. So I was doing my internship in 2018 at Channel.
At 2018?
Yeah, I just finished college.
Really?
That's how long it took me. I mean, it kind of sounds like it was quick. No, it took me...
8th year senior?
It took me 10 years.
Because were you taking like 2 classes per semester while you're cocktailing or?
It was just me like going in, dropping out, going in, dropping out. When I decided to go back for journalism, I was like full force. It was full load.
Yeah, for the last 3 semesters.
Yeah, full load. That was my priority. It was school.
Right.
But yeah, I just graduated in 2019.
Congratulations.
In May. Thank you.
That's great.
Yeah, thank you.
And you even got to do it in person. That was pre-COVID.
Yes. And I always say that. I'm like, oh, thank goodness I did that.
Could you imagine that you're 1 semester away from graduating and then they say you have to get a vaccine to be a student?
No.
Could you imagine that?
No.
I mean, that's had to
crazy.
happen to people, right? Like, literally, they're almost done, and they say you need a vaccine to be a student here. And a lot of times, when you're a senior in your last semester, you're doing some kind of off-campus internship or on job site type of practicing. So you wouldn't even be on UNLV's campus, but meanwhile, to be a student, you have to have a vaccine.
It's cruel.
And unusual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, so I was doing my internship 2018. In the winter of 2018, we're covering at that time, it was the midterms.
And where were you doing your internship?
Channel 8.
Oh, here in Vegas?
Here in Vegas. So Channel 8, which is funny because my first political interview was with Channel 8.
Really?
Recently. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I still love all the people that I met through there because they're great.
But you were an intern there for what, 6 months or something? 4 months?
It was like a 4 month,
Right. I did an internship at News 12 Long Island.
How funny. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm as part of my internship, I would go to the live shots, the B-roll. Mm-hmm. So my hand would be on the news all the time.
Oh, how funny.
Like we'd go to the grand opening. So I talked to the CEO, "Oh, tell us about the grand opening."
Yeah.
And then they wouldn't play me asking the question. They just play the guy answers. Is that what you did?
Yeah, I did that. I remember Eric Holla. I interviewed him in the Golden Knights locker room.
Right.
It was cool. I mean, cool experience. But I remember thinking, and I remember talking to one of the anchors, and I said to her, I'm like, I don't know if I'm feeling the way that I should be feeling about this. She goes, oh, no. You either love this or you hate this. She's like, you'll know right away. And I remember thinking like, ooh,
right.
Don't like it.
Well, that's what happened to me too. Mm-hmm. I found out that they don't pay you. You get to be on TV, they consider as your pay.
Yeah.
Like unless you're an anchor, like the anchor you were talking to probably paid her dues for 10, 15 years.
Yeah, exactly. It's a career that takes a lot of time to build, I feel, to get to where you're making the money and you're doing the TV shots. But I remember thinking like, no, I don't like this. Right. I just can't see myself doing this. And quite honestly, I'm now in my early 30s. I'm not going to move to some tiny town in the middle of nowhere
to start your career because Las Vegas is too big a market. What's happened to me in New York.
My priorities were different at that point. I mean, I very close with my family. I don't want to move away from them.
For your career.
I've already been away a couple times. I want to start a family.
Right.
And so it just didn't make sense logistically in that way. And then the other way was just I didn't enjoy it.
Right. Well, I saw you on with my friend Michelle Mortensen.
Yeah.
And she's kind of doing what you would be doing, and she's hustling, but she loves it.
She loves it.
She loves it.
Yeah. Yeah, and she's been in it for a while now.
Right.
Because I think she worked at Channel 8.
I think she did,
right?
too. Yeah, I think she started out as a sales girl, Tupperware or something, and then she got a news gig, and then she was with Channel 8, and then she ran for office, and... Yeah. But how do you like going on her show?
It was good. I mean...
Did you know her before that?
I knew of her, but I'd never met her.
Good.
Yeah.
Because I could see the parallels between you and her as well.
She's great, though. Yeah, that was a fun interview. But yeah, I just wasn't liking it. And funny enough, I started following the political reporter there. And that's what opened the door to politics. And that's what opened my eyes.
That late? Because I got the feeling that you became, I don't want to say enthralled, but I got the feeling that once you started to get to know Trump a lot better, you started to, I think you were telling me before the interview that, you started you weren't into politics, but they were forcing it down your throat once Trump said he was going to be president and things weren't adding up. Tell us about that evolution.
So, like I said, I wasn't too familiar with American politics, but I voted in every presidential election.
Right.
I had no idea what a midterm was. You know what I mean?
Right.
I just knew about presidential elections every 4 years. And at some point, I must have been like, hey, what party are we? And in the family, I was like, Democrat. And I was like, okay.
Right.
So I voted Democrat in the elections. And then 2016 came along. I did not vote for Trump.
Really, right.
Yeah. But I found him funny at times. And I remember thinking like, hey, I think this guy might win. And I remember getting some blowback from friends when I said that statement. I was like, oh, okay, that's not a popular thing to say.
Right. You didn't realize that you weren't allowed to say that.
Yeah. And then over time, but it really was, the pivot really started to happen in the news station, because now I was seeing what he'd call fake news. And I was kind of in the news station kind of thinking,
wait a minute,
I don't really like the news that they,
right.
Yeah.
And at school, I'm wondering, at UNLV, are they teaching you about sourcing? Are they teaching you about integrity? Are they teaching you about not making yourself part of the story?
You know what's great? I feel like, I don't know if I'm lucky, but the professors that I had, none of them were like that. I mean, I had, Steve Sebelius was one of my professors, but he was very openly Democrat. I mean,
right. Which is okay.
Which is fine.
Right.
He made no like, oh no, but no, he is who he is. And in his class though, he brought in independents, Republicans. Actually, that's how I met my political consultant. He came to speak at my class.
Really? And that's how you met him?
Funny enough, yeah.
Right.
And
well, there are some Democrats who are regular people.
Yeah.
I'm worried about them. I don't understand how they end up where they end up. But, you know, you just talk about, this past week, Joe Rogan had a podcast with Sanjay Gupta, who is the medical correspondent for CNN. And I'll tell you right now, you know, if you want to find out the truth about COVID, and then I'm not talking about statistics, I'm not talking about any kind of scientific nothing. I'm talking about two people who are having a conversation. And one of them is the medical correspondent for CNN who's pushing what they've been pushing for the past 19 months.
Yeah.
And if you could just hear the nuance of that conversation, you could find out who's full of it and who's not. I mean, it's scary.
Yeah.
Because they're our main news, or they were. I mean, now nobody's watching them anymore. But.
No, but it is a shame. I was lucky because I had really good professors who I feel taught you that's why it's like what I was learning in the classroom, I was not seeing in the newsroom.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was two different things. And I'm like, yeah, no, they're kind of doing a disservice to the public. Then you had Trump saying the fake news, and I was like, oh, I get what he's saying now.
Right.
I get it. And then it was me never hearing Republican messaging until I went with the political reporter to an event where a Republican was speaking, and I was like, whoa.
Right.
This is something I've never heard before.
But it makes sense.
Yeah, but I like what they said. And so then I said, okay, there's a lot of information out there that I don't know.
That you're not exposed to.
And I need to start digging into that.
I mean, I was similar. Maybe I was a little bit more political than you. I knew what a midterm was. But that's about the extent of my being, you know, more aware than you are. And I would watch CNN all the time.
Yeah.
My whole life, I grew up on CNN, Wolf Blitzer and
Yeah.
Larry King or whatever his name is, and I remember my dad, he would always watch Fox News, and when I'd go over and visit him and stuff, he'd let me watch CNN just because I was more comfortable with the same, you know, talent or whatever you want to call it. And I never understood why he didn't like CNN, because I thought, oh, it's the news. They're just telling us what's happening. And I didn't realize until late 2015 or 2016 with Trump that whole, you know, they are full of it. You know, because I knew Trump. I knew that they were lying about him. I'm thinking, how could they do that? Because they know what I know. Like, I grew up in New York. They grew up in, CNN was in New York before they went to Atlanta. You know, they know they're lying, but they do it anyway. It's like the horse dewormer.
Yeah, the ivermectin. Yeah.
They know that it's ivermectin that was prescribed by a doctor, but they say that Joe Rogan's taking horse dewormer. They're knowingly lying.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
Yeah.
So tell us, you started to get interested in Trump and people were giving you the stink eye when you mentioned it.
So, no, you know what's funny is so when I remember I was like, I'm switching to Republican. You know, I'm like, I'm, you know, this is the party that I really resonates with the values that I hold. And I never knew that before. And then I remember the first time I said I was a Republican was actually with a classmate from UNLV. We went out to lunch, and I don't know how it started, but what party are you? And I said, I'm like, this is it. I'm like, Republican. And he goes,
coming out of the closet.
And he goes,
Jeez.
So you're a racist. That was his response.
Welcome to the Republican Party.
And I was like, okay.
That's how it's gonna be.
I'm like, okay. I'm like, game on. Yeah.
Wow. That's quite the story.
Yeah. It was just, it's so interesting. But, I can't get too mad at him. I mean, that's what his party is telling him, right?
Right.
And that's all he hears. But he and I got along great. Right. I mean, it never became an issue between us or anything. We've had really great conversations from two different points of views. And that's why I feel very optimistic, because I always say, I'm like, I think people should knock doors, because it's really the party leaders that are very divisive.
Right.
Your average American can be very reasoned and logical and compromising, I feel.
Well, if you watch the news, you would think that black people and
gosh.
white people are fighting at every gas station on every street corner because there's so much racial divide here in America.
Yeah, no. And even when I was doing Latinos for Trump in 2020, and I'd be wearing, the Trump shirt, and I'd forget, I mean, it's just a shirt I'm wearing for work, and then I would go to grocery shop or anything.
And you got Make America Great Again.
It was like, Women for Trump or Latinos for Trump. And I remember I would sometimes remember that I'm wearing it because you'd hear the news and, I was wearing a Trump hat and I got beat up. People would be like, I like his shirt. And I was like, thanks. Yeah.
Right.
Never once did anyone give me bad attitude or say anything rude to me. So I think that amongst us, we can get along.
Well, they call it the silent majority, too. Mm-hmm. I mean, that so many more people are conservative, but they're too busy working to go picket or to go to a protest.
Totally, yeah.
And, and a lot of times, people, and unfortunately, things have changed from 2016. I think that you might get some snarky remarks if you were to wear the same thing to, the grocery store. If you were to wear a MAGA thing, people are a lot more bold, especially if you're not wearing a mask. You walk in with a MAGA shirt. Go ahead.
Today, like in today's day and age?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I walk in without a mask to a lot of places, and nobody really says anything.
I keep saying the mandate comes down to who's at the front door.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
And 1 out of 10 times, you got some person.
Totally. I've had it maybe a handful of times, but yes, you're right. It's like one person in there.
Right. It comes down to the person. Mm-hmm. And who, what regular, think about you before all this stuff, right? You didn't know nothing about politics. Do you want to be making $12 an hour standing at the front of Nordstrom's being the mask police?
Yeah, no.
You're not a 20-year-old girl just trying to make a couple bucks, and you got to start jumping into the political mumbo-jumbo.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, you got more involved. You were leading the Latinos for Trump here in Southern Nevada, or all of Nevada?
Yeah, so it was all of Nevada because I didn't have a counterpart up in Northern, but I mean, I lived in Southern, and we worked with, it was more like the Nevada GOP that we worked with. But yeah, I remember.
And what did that entail? I mean, did you get in touch with the GOP up in Washington, or were you working with, say, Mike McDonald? And
so how it all started off was, so I'm now graduating from UNLV. I said, I want to go work on Capitol Hill. I went to D.C., packed up my car, moved to D.C.
You moved there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because I had gotten bit by the political bug, and I remember Chuck Muth was another speaker that came to my class, and I had asked him about getting into politics, and I remember he said to me, he's like, once politics is in your veins, it'll never get out. And so I was like, I'm going to move to D.C. I want to see if I really like this.
Right.
So I moved to D.C.
Get the passion that didn't come from media.
Yeah, exactly. And I moved to D.C. for 6 months, worked in a congressional office. Then I came back. I got connected with the Trump campaign, and I came back to Vegas to work on the Trump campaign. And then a couple months into it, they offered me the Latinos for Trump position, which was the RNC. I was employed by the RNC, and then we worked on Hispanic messaging in the state of Nevada.
Right.
Yeah. And so at first I was employed.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. So at first I started off as the Nevada GOP's like a field organizer for the Trump campaign, and then that position moved me into the Latinos for Trump RNC but we always work closely with the Nevada GOP.
Right.
Yeah.
So then, will you work with Mike McDonald or Alita
Yep.
Benson,
Yeah,
Jessica
love 'em all.
Hansen?
Yep.
Good,
Yeah.
good. And then, so what was it like being in Washington, D.C.? Was it your first time there?
First time. I'd never been to the city.
I've never been. I've driven through Washington.
Oh, you got to go.
But I've never gone. It's been on my list
Yeah.
for a long time.
Yeah, you got to go. Yeah, I'd never been there.
You know, January 6th was going to be the first time I went.
What
I
happened?
didn't have anybody to go with.
Isn't that funny?
It's crazy how that ended up being. I just was thinking I wanted to go support Trump if he's going to be leaving. That's
what it really was.
That's all I wanted to do.
To be honest,
I would have been a domestic terrorist if I actually went.
So me too, because I had a ticket booked. I was in Georgia at the time for the Senate runoffs.
Right.
And then I think that the count wasn't. I don't know, but they extended our trip, and so I was like, oh, can't go to DC.
You're gonna miss it.
I've canceled the flight. But yeah. Interesting. But it was me too. I'm like, I want to see Trump one last time before he's gone.
Right. And I thought it was going to be the last big rally. You know,
Yeah.
he's had all these rallies that I'd never been to.
Oh, they're great.
I've never gone to anything. You know, I'm new to this whole politics.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't have time. I work all day, every day.
Yeah, no, I remember when I went to his for the first time, it was the Bullhead, Arizona one.
Right.
And
that's when we couldn't have one because of the COVID restrictions, so we did it over there.
Yeah. And it was like a rock concert. It was so fun.
I bet.
Cool. It was cool. But yeah, no, I think everybody's idea was that. It was like, hey, he's going to be gone. We want to hear him, support him one last time.
Right.
And yeah, what a bummer.
And then what did it turn into? But speaking of party politics, so you worked with the GOP, you've worked with the NVGOP. Have you ever had any interactions with the CCRP?
No.
Here in Clark County? Never even, nothing.
You know, Dave Sajak's wife was running in 2020.
Right.
And so she would come to some of the Hispanic, like the Latino for Trump events.
Right.
Nice lady. David, I think, came. I don't even think I could really pick him out if I saw him in a room.
Right.
But I remember he came into the office. He did not say hello, or he was a bit rude. And I remember afterwards somebody told me, oh, that's the
chairman of the
CCRP. But I have never had a personal interaction with him.
And they never invited you to nothing. And how about in recently? You know, they have competing factions.
Yeah.
As of today, in the lead for chairman of the CCRP is Jesse Law and his contingent, who have previously worked with. He only worked not only with Trump in Washington, but closely with Mike McDonald and in the NVGOP.
Yeah. And
congratulations, Mike McDonald, last week winning the chairman of the NVGOP.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you haven't been getting, because I'm guessing you're going to need support from everybody from the counties to the NVGOP in order to win this race, especially being that Clark County is partially covered in your district. Do you have any opinion on what's been going on? Surely you've heard some of it in the news and stuff.
I've heard of it. Haven't been to any of the meetings. For me, I think my gauge of it is gonna be, hey, let's see who really throws their actual support and helps get candidates out there and helps push forward the campaign, right? So for me, you know, people are going to support who they want to support. It's a very personal decision,
right?
You know, but I think now that I'm running and, you know, some people are familiar with me, I think time will tell whether, you know, they truly are wanting to unify and strengthen the party or not. Right. I mean, I guess we'll see that as things progress.
But as far as, you know, you're starting to make the rounds. I saw you on, you know, shows like Sebastian Gorka's show. You were on Steve O'Bannon's show.
Yeah.
I saw you on your alma mater on CBS News.
Yeah.
You finally got big enough that I said, all right, if you could do Bannon's show, you could do my show. So, but as you continue to grow, I'm guessing that, you know, for example, Sam Brown said that he was going to be a candidate. And then within 2 weeks or a week, Dave Sajak had him speaking at the CCRP meeting. But no such invitation. was extended to you.
No such invitation was extended to me.
I just want to know who they pick and choose.
Right.
I'm guessing, I don't know, we're going to talk in part 2 more about, say, Sam Peters and Tony Lane. And, I don't think that, obviously the parties are not supposed to get involved when you guys are duking it out. Just whoever ends up winning, they're supposed to put their full-fledged support behind. And that was some of the problems. They're saying that the Ccrp wasn't supporting the Trump ticket. NVGOP was saying we need to support everybody. They said we were concentrating on down ballot candidates.
Yeah.
We'll see where that goes. But you also have been outspoken about the election results in 2020.
Yeah.
And you've spoken a lot about November 3rd. Mm-hmm. We had Alita Benson on for, I think it was 3 hours.
Yeah, I saw that. It was great.
You saw the episode?
Alita's great.
Yeah, Alita is great. She's a rock star.
Yeah.
Jessica Hansen as well. What is your stance? I saw you on Bannon, but we're not going to play the clip. So why don't you tell us about that paper you wrote?
So the election one, so that came from me being, so after November 3rd, what's crazy is, I was one of the few, because people have I feel like most people view the world like half glass empty, and I look at it as half glass full. But I mean, this was just from me knocking the doors and talking to the people and being on the ground. I'm like, we've got this. Right. Like, Trump's got this. You know what I mean?
I lost bets. I was positive.
Oh, me too. Me too. Me too. And it pained me to pay the $100 to one guy, especially because I'm like, listen, this isn't supposed to happen. But whatever.
But you pay your debts.
I'm a woman of my word, and I paid the debt.
I have a feeling if it was the tables were turned, these Democrats wouldn't have paid me because they would have thought it was BS. But I digress. Continue.
Right. So, it was, I remember election night, I was like, I was feeling good. Right. We knocked doors up until like 5 or 6, I think it was 5. We stopped knocking doors. And
on election day?
On election day.
You're a nut. You go, girl.
Yeah. And I remember I took a break to eat, and I was going to get ready to go to the party after. And I was thinking, like, I feel really good about this. And then as things progressed through the night, I went poll watching too, by the way.
Right.
Went to a poll.
Well, who did you coordinate to go poll watching with? Was that the NVGOP?
The NVGOP. Okay. So that was part of that was all of us had. Mine was.
Was it in Clark County?
Clark County.
Yeah, okay. I was just curious because the CCRP should also be having precinct directors and poll watchers, the NVGO. So I was just curious how you got that.
Yeah, no, all of us had a location to go to. It was my first time poll watching.
Now, what does a poll watcher do?
So, I mean, what I did was you just walk into the room, you sit in the chairs that they have for you, and you kind of just watch what's going on.
Is that your understanding that that's a new thing? The chairs, or were you used to be able to walk around and now you had to sit in your chair because of COVID?
Oh, see, were you able to walk around?
No,
before?
I don't know.
I don't
know. I'm newer than you are.
Oh, I have no idea.
I don't know either. But I'm, because like I know in Pennsylvania they would make him stand outside the windows and looking in.
Yeah.
And here they have you sitting in chairs. I'm just curious. In 2018, were there chairs, or were you able to walk around and look over people's shoulders?
This is 2020.
Right. I'm saying before.
I see. I see what you're saying. Who knows?
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know.
Continue.
But the process was I checked in. I hung out where the other poll watchers were. I mean, really, one of them.
Can you see?
No, I mean, people are voting.
Right.
No, they're voting. This one guy's reading a book, and I'm just kind of like,
what am I really supposed to be looking for?
Yeah. And then I remember we were all told to ask how many votes had been cast at that location up until that time.
Good. And that turns out to be important information in hindsight.
Very important information. And so I asked the ladies, how many people have voted? How many votes have been cast at this location up until this time? I think it was like 6:30. And then they get kind of like, and they start looking at each other and they go, and then one goes, our system's down. We don't have that number. Boom. And I was like, weird. Okay.
I mean, that's a pretty straightforward question.
Yeah.
How many people have been here?
So then I put in the chat, I'm like, hey, at my location, they're saying system's down. They don't have the number. So we never got that number of how many votes were cast that day at that location.
Right, because it's important in hindsight now, because if 30,000 people had voted, and then at 6:30 polls close at 7, and then at 9 o'clock they say 60,000 people voted, you're going to say, well, where did these 35,000 votes come from? We were projecting 30,000 total.
Right. Yeah, and I was in there. I didn't see all these people flood in.
Right.
Yeah, so we were there for a while. So that was a little funky. And then as the night went on, we all know what happened, votes.
Right, we went to bed and Trump was comfortably in the lead, and we woke up and he wasn't.
And it was devastating. And I remember, people started to started kind of kicking into gear, like, okay, what are we going to do?
Right.
And so I chatted with Alita. The Nevada GOP was, setting up shop with the legal team, and they're going through affidavits, and people were wanting to volunteer and help out. And,
right.
And they kicked into gear, and I was like, okay, yeah, I want to help out too.
Right. We went to the Trade Center Drive and just stood outside. I mean,
Oh, yeah. So election night, I remember too, we watched them pack up all the equipment, and then we followed them to Trade Drive. And I remember Alita had told me, she goes, no, you don't understand. Like, sometimes polls close at 7, and then these people don't even show up. I don't know where they go for hours with this stuff.
Right. They leave at 7 and they pull in at midnight to drop off the...
But they don't go straight to the trade win. So that was the instructions too. We watched them pack everything, and we followed. And so when I
Did you follow?
Oh yeah, and I told one of the ladies,
FBI?
I was like, hey, but I was honest. I was like, hey, what car are you in? I'm gonna be
following you
to the trade. She's like, okay, kind of made me feel like I'm crazy for doing it. I'm like, whatever.
Because if it was me, I'd be like, oh, cool. Let's go. I'm going to be in my truck. Just follow me. I'll drive slow.
A bit of a, Right. And so I was like, okay. But, yeah, they went.
Well, it's like in Arizona, too. And the people who were working there, it was so nasty. The people who are, when we're all just, and
these
I don't care if it's 2016 or 2020 or 2018. We wanted safe and fair elections.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it.
But yeah, so then in the days after, I met up with Alita, and then we started working on going through all the data, the affidavits, comparing what the affidavit said to what information we had in the data system. And in doing it, I mean, we went through hundreds, right?
Right.
And I remember I was going through a stack, and I look at it, and it says, a name. And I was like, oh, it's a familiar name. And then I look, and I was like, oh, that's a familiar address, too. And it turned out it was my brother's name and his old address.
Shut up.
And right when I saw that, I was like...
And his old address.
His old address. Because at this point, I know he had moved. I know that he voted in person because he was not about the mail-in ballot.
Right.
And I said, no way. And so then I look up... I do the cross-reference of the data. Sure enough, a ballot had been sent in with that name. From his old address. And voted. And for me, I'm like, it's really personal at that point.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like, come on. And I told him, I'm like, hey, check your vote. And sure enough, his was provisional. So his never counted.
And there's nothing like having something taken away from you.
Yeah.
Whether you're talking about your right to own a gun, or you're talking about your right to post that you don't believe something on Facebook, or you're talking about now you found out that your vote doesn't even count.
Yeah.
Your vote is actually a -2.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're going from +1 Trump to +1 Biden. That's a 2-vote swing. Mm-hmm. So your brother actually turns out to be doing double the damage for the party that he wants to vote for.
Yeah. So that was a bummer. And then
that was a bummer. Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, so I mean, those weeks spent with the team and seeing what I saw, I say, number one, why is it so bizarre to ask?
Right.
To see our election, it shouldn't be weird. And to everyone who's in these elected positions, I say, why are you being weird about it?
Right.
This is your duty. I mean, you're a public servant.
Right. I'm a teacher. If a student fails and you're the parent comes in, I can say, okay, well, let's take a look on this homework. He got a 40. On this homework, he got a 60. On this homework, he got a... And we could go through, and the parent says, okay, I saw the grades that,
it's a fair
Johnny, you got to do better.
Yep.
Right? I mean, you win an election. Okay, let's look. Look, there's 10 votes for me, and there's 8 for him. I won the election.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's so secretive? What's so insulting?
I don't know. And for the people who are like, are on the side of, oh my gosh, it's crazy to even ask that information, I always say, today it's on your side, but tomorrow it won't be.
Right. In 2016, they disagreed.
Uh-huh.
And they all said the Dominion voting, this, that, the other thing, and, ballots, and they had the same concerns on a much smaller scale than we did.
And I mean, it's the moment that you're cheering for not holding people
Transparency,
accountable
right.
and not being transparent, you've lost.
Something's wrong.
Yeah, something's really wrong.
All right, well, let's get into your election. First of all, your election is my favorite. I mean, by far.
Okay,
We should win.
totally.
Steve Horsford
Yeah.
has done nothing to be a rock star, nothing to set himself apart. He makes appearances at the Pride Parade or this other parade or something else or the vaccine lottery. But other than that, I haven't heard anything like that. I haven't heard of him proposing legislation. He's a new senator. And the district is supposed to be +2 Republican. Now, first of all, that brings up the question about redistricting. Is it going to remain that way? Of course, with the Democrats in power and they see this district, I'm positive they're going to do everything in their power to give themselves the best chance to win and get rid of that +2 deficit.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about where redistricting is going to lead?
I just say bring it on. I mean, we can't be afraid of it. I knew from the moment that I wanted to run and that I decided I was going to run that redistricting was obviously going to be in their hands,
Right.
and that they're going to do anything that they can to benefit themselves. But at the end of the day, I'm like, you still have to try.
Right. Well,
It's worth trying.
I think for you it's a funny situation though, because if they go more rural, you're a conservative and that should help you. If they go more of Clark County, especially North Las Vegas, you're talking about more Hispanics.
Exactly.
So, do you have a horse in this race, or do you totally not even care? You're just ready to go?
I'm just ready to go. I totally don't even care because I've thought that too. I'm like, either way, neither one scares me.
Right.
I mean, I think that, especially too, I'm like, you don't need to rig it for me to feel comfortable. It's like, I'm comfortable with what I believe in, and I'm comfortable with the things that I talk about and the vision that I see for the district and for the country. And I feel like a lot of people are on that wavelength, especially because I think it comes from also being on the ground for the past year and talking to people in the community. You hear what matters to them. I'm at my work.
And if you don't have to keep your story straight if you're speaking from your heart.
Exactly. And at my work, I see it all the time. Steve Bannon says it. He goes, this is a conservative country with a few blue cities. He's totally right. Because when you talk to people around, like my coworkers, young, all of them.
Right. Hip. Right.
Yeah. They are conservative. They like Trump, or they like his policies.
Or maybe they're conservative. They don't realize they're Republican.
But
they think they're Democrat because all young, hip, cool people are.
But you don't even get into the partisan. You don't even really get into the party label. It's just they love this country. They believe in their freedom.
Making tips.
Yeah, they want a strong economy, good jobs.
How would that $600 tax red flag thing affect servers and stuff like that?
That is, that is obviously, that is to go after me and you, regular workers, middle class America. That is not for anything else but that.
Right. How could they say that's to go for the elites?
For the rich. Come on. Come on. I mean, and anyway, it's just so silly on its face. I can't believe that anybody would believe that.
But then, let me ask you this question. So you're new to politics. You're new to this, right? Why are you running for a United States House of Representatives seat? Why aren't you running for the school board or the county commission and trying to get your feet wet in politics first? You're really swinging for the fences here. I feel like with your messaging, with your experience with the GOP, with your experience with the NVGOP, with some of the people who are backing you, which is keeping you in a House of Representatives race, which is a very expensive race. Steve Horsford just released that he made $450,000 in campaign donations, falling short of what he wanted, but nonetheless, that's $500,000. If you were to take your messaging, your connections, your money to run for county commissioner or school board, I think you'd be a shoo-in. Why are you swinging for the fences as a rookie?
Why not? It's kind of, I think that part of it is just my personality. When I said I was going to move to DC and see if I like politics, my family thought I was absolutely insane. And they told me, why don't you just start here? And I was like, no, I want to go to the big stuff. I want to see if I really like it. I do like the federal issues. I'm more driven by federal issues. But, listen, the other ones are not off the table. I think it's just part of my personality that I like to
go big,
go
or
big
home.
or go home. But if it doesn't work out, then hey, something local is something that is not off the
because
table.
we only have an election every 2 years. I
Yeah.
feel like we have a big red wave coming. I mean, this is my personal opinion. Please don't base your campaign on this. But I feel like if you get through the primary, you have a really good shot of taking the
Me
seat
too.
back from Horsford. I feel
Me
like
too.
the primary is the race.
Yeah.
And, but if you were to lose the primary, you can't jump into a school board or a county commission election.
No, it wouldn't be right away. I mean, it wouldn't be right away, but maybe eventually. But yeah, part of it too was out in 2018. I remember when AOC won, and I
Right.
remember I thought, I totally disagree with her on everything, but I remember I thought, looking at her and thinking, how cool, because it gave me hope that at that point I was a waitress, and I said, okay, if people can vote her in, who's a bartender, who's a
Right.
normal person,
Right.
then there's room for somebody like me to talk about this stuff at a big,
I saw you had a cute quote. You
at
said
a
something like,
big
if
level.
Democrats can elect a bartender, then Republicans can elect a waitress.
Yeah, but it's like, I feel like sometimes people look at the federal Congress and say, oh, that's the big leagues. Oh, you got to put your time in for that. And, one of the things that the Democrats are really good at doing is they run people like AOC and throw her in there, and she's very influential at this point.
She could be in the top, I'd say top 10.
You know what I mean? And so I always say my biggest challenge is going to be the Republicans who feel, oh, you should wait your turn. Oh, it's not your time yet.
Right.
And it's like, says who?
Right. Right. Well, I mean, that's crazy. I mean, so I think you're really going to enjoy part 2 a lot then, because we're going to be talking all about the federal issues that you want to be more involved in. We're going to be talking about the economy, to jobs, COVID, the election integrity, a little bit more in depth, immigration, which I know is something near and dear to your heart.
Yeah.
And how Biden's doing, our foreign policy. I mean, if you're going to be going to the House of Representatives, you're going to be in charge of the purse strings. You're going to be very influential on foreign policy matters. And I think the voters would want to know how you feel on all those subjects.
Yeah.
All right. Well, guys, I really, really, really need you to subscribe and like and hit the little bell, because part 2 of Carolina's interview is going to talk about all the reasons why she is the best person for this particular job. I was thrilled to get to know her a lot better, find out how regular of a regular person she is, and that's been the main messaging on her campaign. So part 2, Carolina tells us all about how she feels about the things that are affecting your life on the federal line of government. My name is John Brookhagen. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.